So I'd like to welcome Nayeli Calle-Sousa today. Nayeli is an LCSW and the founder of Brave Perspectives, LLC, where she treats children under the age of 11 and also adults dealing with anxiety and trauma. Nayeli also helps organizations be anti-racist and trauma-informed in their work. Thank you so much for joining us today, Nayeli.
Thank you so much for having me.
You are so welcome. So Nayeli, I have a few questions for you. And I think this is really important stuff because this is an area that we don't necessarily know enough about as private practitioners, but also just as the general public, right? What are some misconceptions about child sexual abuse?
I would say that there are a lot, but there are two major ones that are good for us to highlight here. One is that perpetrators would be a stranger or someone that would be very easily identifiable, someone that visibly looks, quote unquote, sketchy, and you would know to kind of keep your children away from, when really the reality is that 91% of childhood sexual abuse occurs by someone that either the family knows or that the child knows directly. So it's more likely that this person is already in your life or will be invited by you into you and your child's life because they seem like a trusted person or they have a trusted role in your child's life. And another major one is that we should be more protective of girls than boys. And really, so one, it's important to recognize that even very young children have a wide variety of identities that don't fit into girl or boy. And
Right.
also that really puts our boys at risk, that boys really can be sexually abused as well. And that the statistics that we've gotten that makes it more, that say that it's more likely that girls will be abused are likely related to underreporting. And also, I think, related to this idea that we have in society that girls are taken advantage of and that boys do the taking advantage of. So I think it also gives us some blind spots.
Absolutely. I think that those are such important points, Sally. And I know in my work as a private practitioner, that's been a theme that's come up a number of times where boys have been abused in the past and are now men and are dealing with that and grappling with that. And it's such a challenge to be able to talk about that and to work through that when we're in a society where women, girls are the victims, men, boys are the bad people, right?
Right.
I so appreciate you saying that. How many children are sexually abused each year?
So statistics show that 1 in 10 children will be sexually abused before the age of 18. And so if we go on a yearly basis, let's say of all the children born this year, that means that 400,000 babies that are born this year will be sexually abused if we do something to really make a change and put a stop to this.
And that's a huge, huge number.
Yes.
So, Nayeli, what are some of the things that we can do to help prevent child sexual abuse?
Yeah, so my thinking and the approach that I take in as a social worker is to really look at status quo things, social norms that are really not serving us. And I think that this topic of childhood sexual abuse is one of these areas where we have to really look at, if this is happening with such frequency, that means there are some social norms that we have that are actually leading to this. So, I think there's some things that happen here, and and I think some of them are, all of this is cultural, right? We could say that the societal norms that we have are cultural. So I think some things here. So one is this thing around like not using the proper names for body parts, and particularly for private parts that we kind of feel uncomfortable around. And so one of the things that we can do is just from a very young age, teach our children the appropriate names. And so that doesn't mean, to me, get completely rid of any little family or cultural terms that are used, but I like to kind of sometimes scope out. So let's say our child is in school and they hurt their elbow and they need help because it hurts really badly. and they go to their teacher and they say, I hurt my susu. And they're like, I don't know what that is. Like, I don't, but
Right.
that's what your family calls it. So imagine if that was the case for every single body part, even in a place where language is the same, right? We're all using the same language. We're putting our children in a position where if they were to go to ask for help, that the person that they're asking may not know what they're talking about, might have created a name for it, so it doesn't sound so it's not clear. So perpetrators come up with things like calling things like that games, coming up with game names. So if your child has appropriate words, then people will know what they're talking about and can get them help much more quickly. So if you feel like you still need to keep your family's way of using certain terms, and that's fine. You can say, our family calls it this. And then this is what everyone calls it, or this is what doctors call it, so that there's also that dual information in case either some family members aren't comfortable with it, or you're still working on it, or something like that. So I think that would be one thing. The other is to really teach and model consent at a very young age. And so I think a social norm that doesn't serve us here is one is that we have been taught as parents to prioritize obedience in our children over critical thinking. And I know I get a kick out of if I say something to my daughter who's 3.5 and she goes, "Yes, mommy," I feel a surge of pride. I can't lie. I think I've been taught that means I'm doing a good job, right? And so sometimes when kids ask questions or put limits or boundaries, then our frame of reference is that they're being rude, or that they are being bad or something, or that we've done a bad job. So that puts them in a tough position, I think, because remember, if this is happening by people that they know and love and trust, then we're not giving them enough practice to set limits with adults, especially around their bodies. And so around very common interactions like, say goodbye to grandma. No, I don't want to say goodbye to grandma. Go on, give grandma a kiss, right? And they've said that they don't want to do that. Things like that. And then the coercion that happens around that, grandma's going to be sad. If you give grandma a kiss, I'll give you candy. Those are one, we're not respecting what they've just said about their bodies, that they do not want to do that. And two, we're using techniques that can be very easily hijacked by a perpetrator. A perpetrator will bribe and coerce and guilt a child into doing something. So what we want to do is we want to create a world where if an adult does that, a child goes, "That's not what adults do. Adults respect when I say no to something," rather than right now, it easily blends into common parenting strategies that we use.
That makes sense. Yeah, absolutely.
And I think I was going to say, I think those are a lot of the main points.
This is good because hearing it is, really useful, and then people can actually employ it, right? But it's also a reminder to me that I'm a good mom, right? Because my daughter says no to everything.
There you go. That's right.
I'm doing something right. So terrific.
Yes.
What prevents children from telling someone about the abuse? Because I know we all hear these stories of 20 years later, and that they've been dealing with this horrible, painful, traumatic secret for so long.
That's right. So I think a lot of the things that we've talked about already can give us a little bit of a clue here. So one, that it's a parent, it's someone that you know and that your family commonly trusts and invites in. That means that typically a perpetrator is going to use strategies where they're going to use grooming strategies, which means they're slowly but surely they start to do things so that little by little the child is then going to do kind of like the big thing, whatever it is that they're really wanting to happen in the sexual abuse. So that means some steps have happened in between. And usually we might maybe maybe we'll talk to our kids of like, if someone touch your private parts, like don't let them do that or something like that. But so much stuff has happened before that typically, and they're going to do things so that they fly under the radar and have frequent access to your child. So it's not going to be one sudden, not commonly, can still, of course, can happen, but not commonly going to be one sudden violent moment, because then they're going to be easily identified and then not have, and then one, get in trouble, and then two, not have access to your child. So they're going to do things little by little. And so what happens is that children will then feel like it was their fault because they allowed these little things to happen. And then maybe one, don't know, like maybe no one's ever talked to them about it, so they don't know that something that shouldn't be happening is happening, or maybe they have a sense, but by then they feel like this has already happened twice. And so what are people going to think about the fact that I was part of this? Without us really intending it, sometimes parents' reactions, right? A child comes to us and says, this has happened, and we ask, more questions, and it's happened a few times. We might, without wanting to have this effect, just, be so worried that we'll say things like, why didn't you tell me sooner? Or things like that, right? Which intentionally create this responsibility for the child that really they're too young to have.
Absolutely.
I think this sense of like something's already happened a few times and feeling the shame around it. Also, again, because it's usually a person they feel a connection to, they will have mixed feelings about what's happening, and also often not want to lose that relationship. They have felt a connection. The perpetrator has done a really good job of building this trust and this thing that feels like love. So this like, oh, I don't want to get them in trouble. And then if I get them in trouble, then I will lose this connection, this relationship that I really care about. And then sometimes also, like we talked about earlier, like really not having the language, the younger they are for sure, the language to sometimes not having language yet. And other times it's not having the words to describe what it is that's happening. And then other times explicitly being threatened about not sharing.
Terrific. So this has been just incredibly helpful. And I know that our viewers will learn from watching this and also be able to employ some steps and some strategies to keeping their kids safe. Nayeli, now I know you have, is it a training or a workshop coming up soon?
Yeah, I have a workshop. This month is Child Abuse Prevention Month. So I definitely wanted to provide a workshop for parents. Professionals are also welcome, but particularly for parents, caregivers, any family member that's involved in a child's life that is 5 or under. So we can really start young. Many of the times, like we want to help our kids and teach them these tools around how to protect themselves. But we don't know where to start or the language to use. So I wanted to offer a space to have parents get that language, and also know that, we're here to teach kids things like body safety and consent, so that if they're in a situation like this, then they can use their voice. And also it's not all on them. It's up to us. It's up to us, one, to share the knowledge, and also to create a community where we do talk about this. So one thing that I'm hoping this workshop will help us with, and the other thing that helps with prevention, is being very vocal about not just doing this in private with your child, but being very vocal with the folks around you, so that one, they employ these techniques. So I've talked with my family members. And so if my daughter says, no, I don't want to hug, then I want them to respect that. And if they're having a hard time respecting that, then I jump in and I say, she really said no. I culturally, as Latina, do want her to say goodbye in some way, right? So then I will say, but let's give her other options. Does she want to wave? Does she just want to verbally say it? So anyways, so the more that we're talking about it and teaching the family members, the more they will learn. And also the more, if there is a perpetrator in our circle, the more they'll know that we're teaching these things, and the less of a target they'll know. They're like, okay, this is not a good target, because they're doing a lot of education around this.
Terrific. And Nayeli, if people want to register for your workshop, will they find it on your website?
Absolutely. They can go to my website, and there is a tab that says upcoming workshops, and
Okay,
it's offered in English and in Spanish.
Terrific. And I know your website is braveperspectives.com. I'm
That's
also
right.
going to share it in the narrative, and people can contact you if they're interested. Thank you
Okay.
so much for your time today. I really appreciate it,
Yes,
Nayeli.
thank you so much.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.